Okay, so we are here to discuss the climate of today's environment.
I want to start off with just a very simple a very simple premise, because I think before we start debating, or not even debating, but before we start expressing our thoughts on the chain of events that have happened, I do think we need to preface it with a question. So my question is, do we feel that it was right for Twitter and other platforms like Twitter to ban Donald Trump from being on their platform? Was it right for Twitter and other platforms to deplatform Trump?
I feel like that
Wait,
question
wait.
is
Before you answer, simple
okay.
yes or no.
No.
Same. I also disagree with that decision. I think our reasoning might be different, so that's where we're going to explain our thoughts. Go ahead.
Yes. So, but my thoughts is like that is very much the end. That is what has happened, but that's not why we're here, right? So we're here because of the insurrection of the Capitol, right? That's why we're here. That's what we're gonna be speaking about. And then there's sub conversations involved in that. One is the fact that okay, we can see the obvious double standard in race, right? That's blatant because BLM had a very, very different reaction to more so than the actual election and Donald Trump supporters going there to protest. It was just domestic terrorism. There were a bunch of thugs. So that's what happened there. But it is very, very, very different. You know what I'm saying? And then it's kind of, it goes back, you can have even 7 subdivisions of that conversation, because you can say law enforcement was built off of, back in the day where in slavery, it used to be paddy waggers where they would go out and get slaves that were runaways, and then that evolved into, the chain gang. So law enforcement was never really meant to protect black people, so that's why you can see the clear double standard. But then also you can speak about the fact that police partook in that foolishness. Like, they were there and in large numbers participated and agreed. So it's like that was crazy. And then my third main my third main point to that is that even when white people, not all white people, but white people as a group threaten online, they have fringe groups and militias. Even when they make direct threats, they are not viewed in any type of dangerous way. If there's supposed to be a peaceful protest, a walk in solidarity for a black person that was unjustly killed, or the police or a private citizen was the judge, jury, and executioner, there is so much response. Law enforcement responds to that event. They said where they were going to be. They even had merch. And they were still not viewed as a threat. There was still no preparations made. That intelligence was not acted on, probably deliberately, honestly. I want to say it was deliberate because the police took part in it, but I think at the core of it, as a society, we have to admit that we view one thing threatening and one thing non-threatening, right? And I think I explained this to you when I had saw a picture of a black mom and her daughter and a white mom and her daughter, and both of them were doing the same thing. But I remember stating about the black mom, like, she should be doing better and she shouldn't be doing that, that's inappropriate. But when I saw the white mom and her and the white little girl, me as a dark-skinned black woman, phenotypical black woman, said, that is so awesome. She's an athlete. That's how I classified that child. That's how I classified what her mom was doing with her. Yeah. So as a society, this is how we all see it, whether you want to be a part of the system or not. So it's like those are the 2 reasons why I think that they weren't even taken seriously to begin with. View white men as threatening, for the most part, even though they be killing people and whatever.
Yeah, I mean that plays into the entire, the biases that have been taking place in the society for years, not years, but at this point centuries.
Yeah, it's a long time.
It's something that has plagued our, not just our community, but our society as a whole, to a point to where when we see events that to take place like they did on Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever it was, we greatly interpret it differently and we respond to it differently, depending on who's clearly involved and who's not. And I'd like to say that, regardless of what side of the fence you're on politically, it doesn't change the fact that the chain of events took place, and that, regardless of whether or not you support one person or not, it stemmed from a clear source point, and it escalated into the way it did, because of one person's rhetoric. And not just one person, it's one person's rhetoric and everyone else's support around that person, from not taking him seriously, from not thinking that he is, that he's just speaking his mind or saying how it was. There was a clear source of where the rhetoric came from, and the support that he got behind it, or the support that he got from his rhetoric, was taken lightly for over 4 years, a little bit longer than that, 5 years, you would say, because you got to run for president for a whole year.
Right.
So I just feel like, this didn't stem out of nowhere. This didn't come from nowhere.
Oh, absolutely not. It came out of several places, but the only thing that I say I would maybe feel like it's a little bit different from, and it's because I really enjoy watching mental health professionals on YouTube, and I like their take on what's happening, whether it's in the culture, like, urban culture, or just current events in general. And, I have experienced where everybody speculates that Donald Trump has narcissistic personality disorder. They speculate that because nobody knows about a clear diagnosis, right? We're not professionals, we can't say. This is what's speculated. And he said something, and because I am dealing with somebody like that in my professional environment, I understand what happened. Like, I see what it was. Does everybody realize, for the most part, that this is too far? I think so. But I also think that when you're in the situation and when you're moving, unless like you're completely against it, when you're in the situation, you do just like disregard that person. You're like, oh, they're a little, arrogant, and you know what I'm saying? Like, their opinions are not really placed in truth, and it comes with the first little, like, moral compass, where this person wants you to do that and it's not really moral, but then you're like, okay, that's okay, and then it turns into something else until it comes to this big test where something that hasn't happened since like 1812 or something happened in 2021. So it's not all at the same time, and it's not to excuse Donald Trump supporters, but it's to say that I can understand how you start somewhere and then very quickly it becomes out of control, but it very much stems from Donald Trump and his enablers. But he would not be enabled if he did not have a backing. And I'm not talking about his base. In order for his base to be exposed to him, he would have had to have some type of corporate, political, like, backing.
Yeah, but it doesn't help that, again, he's a man that comes from wealth. So a lot of that stuff, he has the ability to fund and push his agenda on his own means. And then on top of that, having the support from the super PACs of the world and that large corporate backing, not even corporate, but just that large wealth of backing that comes in politics. It's easy to see where he's getting it from. And without a doubt, for anyone that says that, we deal and we live in a free society or free democracy, that's not necessarily true. It has always been about who has the more dollar to reach the voter. And it's been like that for generations at this point, to a point to where we have, simple candidates just running to see if they can even be in the general election, where candidates are raising hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that can supply and feed the poverty-stricken neighborhoods in the country over and over again, tenfolds, running from a 3-month campaign just to still lose.
Just to even prove that they can, it's a little ridiculous. And I feel like you have, I guess maybe like I have this thought from being in my field that I'm in, and going to my schools that I've gone to progress in my career, right? So I learned something in a leadership class where they're like the best leaders are the ones that realize that they need the best people type of stuff, right? Like it's anyone can be good at something if they do it for long enough, or anyone if they keep trying, or like you said, throw a lot of money at it, can do it.
Yeah.
But the best leaders realize that it's the actual event, it's the goal.
Mm-hmm.
And they put in place people that are not loyal to them, but loyal to the cause that they are put in place to head, right? So with that being said, that's very different with a speculated narcissistic personality disorder person. They're not going to say, I'm going to place this person in power because they are great. They're going to place them in power because they make them feel good.
Mm-hmm.
That's dangerous as hell, because you already have a warped reality. You already have a very bizarre way of viewing things, and then now you only have yes men.
Yeah.
And then wonder why people took over the Capitol 4 years later.
I mean, outside of you know, men and women storming the Capitol and, you know, doing what they did, I do think that, you know, considering that our country is built on violence, is built on revolution, that for many people, myself included, I do feel that this is all part of the stages to get to the next step. The problem is whether or not you agree that, you know, which direction that step is going into. I do think that for any radical change, an event like this has to happen. And we've seen it over and over again in just our lifetimes.
Right.
You know, starting, you know, we can easily pick out 9/11, but before 9/11, there was the Desert Storm, you know, to where, you know, things changed drastically on how companies operated and did business in the United States because of that. You know, and a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but it was related to oil, and it was related, and oil directly affects our distribution market on how things are happening in our country. So that being said, after Desert Storm, now we have 2001 with the World Trade Center and 9/11, obviously, and where that progressed. 2 years after that, we invade, you know, the Middle East, and once again, our country completely shifted gears on how things were. We became a war-torn country. And it wasn't in the same aspects of, you know, World War I, World War II, where people didn't have jobs and things like that. No, the technology has advanced us so much to where, you know, we have a certain population go to war, while everything at home continues to grow and prosper. And the wealthy take advantage of that, and not just the wealthy, but because we do have outliers that start from nothing and actually become something. But for the most part, people that have money were able to progress and fill gaps and holes in our society to become profitable. And I do think that, you know, that was built on blood and tears. You know, that's built on you know, on war. And, you know, so now looking at today's events, you know, January 2021.
I think it was January 6th.
Yeah, 20, or to get the day out. Yeah, January 6th, 2021.
Yeah.
We look at it, and, you know, it's very reminiscent of, you know, that step in change.
Oh, I think that's
whether
the shit
it
out of
be,
everybody.
yeah, I mean, whether it be good, whether it be bad, it does signify change, and, you know, it's going to be up to each individual and also our leaders to decide what's going to happen next. I do think that a lot of the talk that's happening right now in the Congress is for a shit show, because we only got 11 days left at this point.
I completely disagree, though.
Okay.
I think that they have to be, like, almost redundant in what they choose to do, because I want you to completely understand, if Donald Trump was not a caricature of an insane person and had this personality that was larger than life, completely ill-equipped for the job, no, you know, no political experience whatsoever, like, if it was anyone other than Donald Trump, we would be having a very different conversation right now, if a conversation at all. It could be civil war. It didn't work because Donald Trump is not as connected in Washington as he is. If this was for example, he, I think all of his secretaries of defense and all of his, like, uniformed people that he appoints, right? they all openly disagree with him because they serve two masters. They're serving their organization as well as trying to serve the president in some way. So I think that if he was the type that had any Mattis had any respect for, it would be different. He would have the support of the military in a way to where if he could invoke as many people to come to the Capitol as he did on January 6th and have somewhat of a support by uniformed forces of the United States of America, we would not be sitting here having this conversation. It would look very different.
The only reason why I disagree is because there is a checks and balance system. As much as people like to complain about that checks and balance system, it works. And Donald Trump is proof that it works. Trump can't do anything without the House and the Senate.
Facts.
As well as the House and the Senate can't do anything without Trump. So, I do think that, there is a story to tell when it comes to how far Trump could have pushed it and vice versa, but I do think that that story would have been like that no matter who was it, whether it was Trump or someone else. I do think that the main problem that we do have when it comes to Trump and people that support Trump, or when I say people that support Trump, not the voters, but the people that he puts in place in the power, is that they are all of a older generation that doesn't understand what the working class needs today.
Absolutely.
I even would go as far as say that the working class of today, which encompasses many generations, also don't understand what they would need in order to survive in today's society.
That's true.
Because it's like, just look at the housing market, for instance, how it's completely unequipped or it's inept for anyone of a certain generation to actually buy housing unless they come from generational wealth or have some type of reoccurring stimulus. The housing market itself has grown. The housing market has crashed once already, but for many people it's still considered a buyer's market, and the availability of houses to buy is at its lowest. It's at its lowest because a lot of people recognize that as a powerful investment, and people with the income are buying it up, and it's not leaving enough room for anyone else to purchase, which speaks greater volume of the current climate of the economy, when people that are looking for housing and people that need housing can't go out and buy it because, one, they can't afford it, and two, there's not enough of it to go around to begin with. So there's a lot, and again, that's not Trump's fault. That's not the government's fault. That is, in all honesty,
also,
I do think
Congress,
it's this.
The government is rich as shit. Like, are we ever going to talk about that? I know that they're up there and they're like, oh, I'm speaking for my constituents. But
we should absolutely have that conversation.
Average person walking around in Washington D.C. are multi-millionaires that have,
not the average person, the average politician walking around in D.C.
Excuse me, absolutely, the average politician walking around in D.C. that say they serve the people. I am not trying to, I'm not trying to devalue what they're doing for the country or their job that they have in this country as far as politicians, but if we're honest, they're disconnected because their asses just ain't in our tax bracket.
True.
They are not just upper middle class, they are rich. They're multi-millionaires, and they have been making money for quite some time.
Yeah. Well, to hit that 1%, it doesn't take much, and that's something that people should.
I don't think they're 1%. I don't think that they're 1%.
Well, in order to be 1%, you have to make over, I think, $250,000 anyway, which again, for a lot of people, isn't a lot when you look at the dollar amount and how wealthy people can be. But the fact that you are now 1%. Just at $250,000 speaks volumes, and it doesn't.
You don't think it's higher than $250,000 a year?
I don't think so. I mean, we can pull it up. We can pull it up and look at it. But I'm pretty sure it might even be lower, because I know in 06 it was close to 190,000. That automatically puts you to 1%. But now when you have, like I said, actual billionaires, and the number of billionaires grow on a daily basis,
right.
Amongst the wealthy, not
Yeah.
average people, but amongst the wealthy. $250 doesn't sound like a lot of money, because when you're making billions of dollars, it's not.
Because even when I'm thinking about it, I'm like, okay, only like AOC, like a part of the new politicians. She was like, oh, I was a bartender. But even like the righteous people that are like, oh, super,
No, if
super
you're a
fancy
politician,
pants.
you're making
You
well
got
into the
that-
six figures right now.
You got that bank, and they invest, and all of them have portfolios. So I feel like that's a conversation to be had. Yes, Mitch McConnell is too old. He's a dinosaur.
I also feel like we're jumping all over the place because we started talking about Trump and the
No,
events
we're
that took
not.
place.
We're not. It went from, we're starting here, law enforcement. We went to race, and then we went to Trump and like all of why he is encompassing all to do with Trump, like everything to do with him. So I feel like the natural segue would be into the social media situation.
Yeah. I have a lot to say about that because I do think that when it comes to private corporations, that speaks to capitalism and the country's love for capitalism and how capitalism is so great and so perfect that it just can't make it. There is no wrong with capitalism because the free market dictates so. So, what happened on social media? Donald Trump was recently banned not just from Twitter, but several other large social media companies to a point to where you have people on both sides either happy or flamingly angry. And I do think that a lot of people will say that they're angry because Trump himself was dictated. But I do think if you know anything about the economy, if you took any kind of basic level business portion or economic class in high school, you would realize that this sets a dangerous precedent for any private organization to dictate who can and cannot be on their platform, because that automatically puts them at a higher level of, at least they put themselves in a position to where they are now enacting laws or their own agenda to levels that the government doesn't even operate.
But that's exactly where I kind of wanted to start the conversation, because it's like, I have maybe an unpopular opinion, but I do not think that he should have been banned. And I don't think that he should have been banned because it's very dangerous to put down that line. Because when you put down that line, you can manipulate it, very much like we saw what Trump was able to do over 4 years. Look what happened from what was typical in politics back 4 years ago, 2016, to what's typical in politics now. Right? So now Twitter was the first person to suspend him, and then they decided that, hey, it was permanent. And though I agree that they're a private corporation and can choose to do what it is that they feel is best for their platform, I feel like it's a move towards a direction that we didn't want to go to. I feel like they are trying to censor, and I feel like the natural thing would be to just start to do something like this where people would have the most support for it. Because one thing that America is good at is by doing something but working somewhere else. So this Donald Trump was never the main goal, but if you're comfortable with him being deplatformed, what else would you be comfortable with?
It goes back to what's more important to society: convenience or the ability to prosper. And I say that because companies like Twitter, companies like Facebook, companies that rely on having information and data on people have to depend on capitalism. But when you are the biggest show in the business of any sector and have any real knowledge, the free market that a lot of people like to speak of, does not operate in that same way. There can't be a free market if all of the billions of dollars already exist in one entity. And what we're seeing that today with Facebook and Twitter, essentially. Not that Twitter is the only platform like itself, because it's not, but it's the most well known because of the money that goes behind Twitter.
Right.
And
Twitter is open shares. I think it's like traded on the market.
Yeah, it is. But that goes to show you that even though that there are websites that exist and function almost exactly like Twitter, and sometimes a lot more convenient than Twitter, Twitter doesn't go anywhere because it has the dollars to stay relevant, and you can't take market share from it from something unless you have, one, the time, or two, the resources. And a lot of startup companies don't have the resources in order to do it, and they don't have the time at this point to do so. So when we say, is capitalism working? It is, just not in the favor of the people. It's working in favor of businesses and of the corporations. Correct.
But here's the thing, right? So like most people back in the day, before the invention of the internet, which is why I think that everything that happened with Donald Trump, call me a little bit of a conspiracy theorist, but everything that's happening with Donald Trump is to usher something else in. It's not so much to do with Donald Trump. It's kind of like the little like game in New York. I guess I've only seen it in New York, where they're switching the stuff around and you don't really know where the little ball is under the card or whatever, or where the card, like what you're looking for.
I think most of us refer to where's the ball?
Yeah,
under
whatever.
The cup.
So like something like that. I feel,
New York.
call me a conspiracy theorist, but I do feel like what we're seeing with Donald Trump, call it an unpopular opinion, is to usher something very much more sinister in. They couldn't get the legislation through, and I feel like they're doing it in the court of public opinion, which is easier anyway. So I feel like,
when you say legislation, what kind of legislation are you talking about?
so there's been tons of legislation going through as far as how to properly govern the internet, where the government is concerned, what is allowed, what is not allowed, and also what kind of sanctions will be on the internet, because the internet is very much, I mean, we know it now, and most of our kids have only known the internet and been raised around the internet, but it is still very much the Wild Wild West. So I feel like a lot of that legislation could not go through. So I feel like it's happening in the court of public opinion, because people are comfortable with you banning Donald Trump, because it makes sense. He was directly responsible for the deaths of 5 people thus far. But I don't agree with it. You know, like I said, people were informed by news, the free press, and the free press was directly affiliated with the government, right? And now people can legitimately choose not to have anything to do with the free press or the big media conglomerates, and they can only get their news from social media. So how do you merge the two worlds? You start censoring it. You make a wormhole, you make a tunnel to where this is only the information that you can get. This is the information that I say is okay. So that's why I don't think he should have been banned. But at the end of the day, the fact still remains, Twitter is a private company. They can do with that whatever they want. But if they decide tomorrow they don't like the word coronavirus, actually you're gonna have to blurt this out, especially if you put it on YouTube, because the algorithm will not allow that. So like you gotta be like boop, or like maybe
for what?
You can't say blah, you can't say C19. You can't say the whole word.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Or you can't say it a lot. I don't think like embedded in the middle of a 30-minute video would matter, but the algorithm is looking for it.
Sure. I'm gonna allow you to handle that one. I was just looking for the name of it, because there's a lot of talks about internet censorship and how the government was trying to give power or authority to internet service providers, the ability to throttle internet data rates and certain things like that. But that bill is it's deeper than that, and it goes far past the ability to just throttle someone's internet connection. Right. It goes far deeper than just having the ability to say what you want and live on the internet freely.
It goes along with money, because the internet became money. It became monetized. So as soon as something becomes monetized and then has a certain level of freedom in it, oh nah, the government gotta come get that. They gotta come. They want the coins. They want their things. So I just feel like this is happening, and this is the conversation that we're having, but the revolution will not be televised. That's not what's actually happening. What's happening very much so to me is they're doing this, and people feel the way that they want about it, passionate feelings on both sides, but at the end of the day, nobody can do anything about it. And then Donald Trump's situation across social media has now set precedents. And if you know anything about precedents, people use it to manipulate whatever they want to do moving forward, whether it's in whatever direction. They can say, well, back when this happened, we chose to deal with it like this, or because this happened and this situation is worse or better, we're going to choose to handle it like this, and you ain't never going to get me, internet. That's just how I feel. I just feel like you're not going to get me. You're not going to get me. No.
So, nevertheless, I think we can agree that private companies having the ability to deplatform people is, doesn't sit right with us. Whether or not it's right or wrong, it's we're not the moral police to say,
right.
But it doesn't sit right with us. I personally believe that when a company or a private entity has the ability to deplatform someone, they have two options at that point. They can either find a new platform or create their own. I do think that, when we say, oh, he's banned from Twitter, it's such a bit, this is awful, he shouldn't be watching. I think part of it's right, and part of it is, that's Twitter's right. At the same time, we're talking about the president of the United States, who at any point in time can go to go into the White House briefing and speak any kind of spew and hatred that he wants to at any point in time. He doesn't, because it's not convenient for him, but that goes back to my point of convenience versus capitalism.
That's true, but also the president of the United States has an opportunity to inform his constituents via social media when everybody pays attention. We have social media in our hand all the time.
Yeah, but
right?
but Twitter's not the only social media presence, and he has the right to go somewhere else. If Twitter's not going to allow him, he has the right to go somewhere else.
But then at the same time, if he too dangerous for Twitter, ain't he too dangerous to be the president? Like, if you too dangerous to type more than 150 characters, how can you run a free world? Like,
no, you're right, but that goes back into democracy, and again, he did win the electoral votes. The last election, so it's something that we had to deal with for 4 years. But now that 4 years have come to an end, and he lost this election, and we'll have someone else in it. Hopefully, uses the platform more responsibly. What I do know is that Twitter is not Donald Trump's. So for him to get banned, I really don't care. What I do know is that he has the ability to go elsewhere. If he chooses not to, that's on him. And that goes back. A lot of people that are complaining about Twitter and Facebook and all the other social media platforms, you could either create your own platform or you can go somewhere else. Now, if you're worrying about your impact and how you reach everyone, then I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to do the groundwork. YouTube wasn't invented overnight, neither was Facebook, and Twitter is relatively new, but Twitter also was, not every company could be Twitter, unfortunately. If that was the case, there would be millions of them, and that goes for any industry. If it was that easy to start a company and make a platform and just have tens of millions and hundreds of followers, everyone would be able to do it.
That doesn't exist, sir.
Whatever. My point is, everyone would be able to do it. So again, if you're unhappy with how a private company uses their platform, you have two options: get a new platform or create your own platform. But I don't want to see it on my Facebook feed. Like, just come on, go somewhere else with that.
I disagree. I like to talk to the people on social media.
I don't.
So it's okay. And then I've been watching so much or consuming so much commentary on everything. And, I guess I would like to end it by saying, all of this got context or whatever, because I feel like we can sway either way without knowing the surrounding information in regards to an event or a situation. So with all of that being said, it's kind of like, I guess I want to summarize my thought by saying all of this is going to be in the books of history, and the way we frame it and the context that we put around it is going to mean something, because that is our path forward. Are we getting ready to tell the truth? Because if we tell the truth, we can make a real impact, and we can actually move forward in a world that everybody can tolerate. But if we start spewing all of this stuff that either has no context, or you deliberately left it out so that you can paint your own narrative, we just gonna be here in the ghetto. So that's all I got.